Hey everyone, La Plata Peak. It is Sunday, September 20th, and just wanted to bring another video today in the Pyramid of Power line from the Silver Shield, and got to thinking, just kind of reviewing the coins in this, and it kind of dawned on me that, as we talked about in the last video, this We Indoctrinate You was the first in the series, and they're, in I guess the iconography of the series, they're kind of going it through the school system. But really, as I was looking through the rest of the collection, at least until you get the last two, um, it really is all about indoctrination and just the different ways of the indoctrination. As I started to think about it more, I think that was more intentional than anything else for We Indoctrinate You to be number one, and then have the rest of them follow. Maybe just kind of explain of how we as a society have been indoctrinated in various ways. And so I'll just kind of move on to the next one here. In the reverse proof, We Condemn You. And as you can see here, this is a skeletal figure of a clergyman. This is obviously the Christian faith, probably either Catholic or Eastern Orthodox or something like that. And we know it's Christian because he's reading from the Bible. And this didn't really start with Christianity, as far as indoctrination through religion. This has been going on as long as human beings have been around. There have been indoctrinations done through clergymen. You can always go all the way back to ancient Egypt, where the priests basically kind of ruled the roost, or right at the right hand of the pharaohs and things like that, and did take a lot of power, and were given a lot of power from the kings of ancient Egypt, and then just kind of into Greece and oracles and things like that. So this isn't really anything new from a human being aspect, but just as we get into contemporary times, the last few thousand years, Christianity has been the dominant religion in the world. And that's certainly the case here in the United States as well, and in most of the Western world. But I don't think Christianity is alone, in its indoctrination of people. I mean, Islam is very indoctrinating. Just as an example, Judaism to some extent. The Eastern religions, when you get into like Zen Buddhism and things like that. Yeah, I don't think that's as indoctrinating, and it's I think that's why you rarely see any conflicts going on with at least with they're not the ones that they're the aggressors. And I'm not like making excuses for Buddhism or Taoism or things like that, but you very rarely see the Japanese, at least recently, or the people in Tibet, they may be getting their asses handed to them by the Chinese, but they're never encroaching on the Chinese. They're just basically saying, hey, we want to do our thing. So there may be some debate in there as to as far as the indoctrination aspect goes. But as far as this particular round here, just kind of getting to the round itself, this is probably, if not the most in demand, at least from the original line from 2015. This is one of the most ones that are in demand, if not the most, as I said. This recently sold, and I'm talking within the last few weeks, on eBay for $999.99. This one piece of silver went for just about $1,000, which is, kind of spectacular when you think about it like that. So I did not pay anything close to this. I did pay quite a bit over spot, but nothing close to $1,000. So I do feel I got a pretty good deal just on the whole collection. Even though I spent quite a bit of money on this collection, basically, like I said, equal to about an ounce of gold. It wasn't anything close to that, so may have gotten a bargain just in this particular round here. But my experience with religion, I was raised in a Christian household. Wasn't Catholic. It was, I think, Methodist is the church I grew up in from an early age. And then my family started going to a Congregationalist church, which is kind of the Church of the Pilgrims, till I graduated high school. And then went to church and basic training in the Air Force, just because you had the choice of sitting around and doing details and sweeping floors and folding clothes and things like that, or you could go to church. And so most people went to church. And when we got to church and basic training, we were basically there was some singing and some things like that, but most of it was actually just kind of like asking the chaplain who won the football game from the day before or the week before or whatever. So but it's when you look at religion and how it has shaped governments, I kind of like to go back to around the time of Henry VIII, when Henry VIII broke away from the Pope or Rome. Up until that time, most of Europe had been strictly tied to the Vatican, and Henry VIII kind of decided that he wanted to get divorced because his wife wasn't having sons, and so he wanted to marry somebody that would give him a son, because obviously it's the woman that decides whether it's a boy or a girl. But anyway, so he did that and married a few other women, and then finally with Jane Seymour, he finally got a son, and he didn't live very long. But with all that, you had England going back and forth from Catholic to Protestant, and a lot of people died. Especially when Mary the First became queen in the early 16th century, or mid 16th century. She killed a lot of Protestants, and when Elizabeth regained the throne, or the Protestants came back with Elizabeth, and later in the 16th century, there were a lot of Catholics that were killed, and just kind of going back and forth. And the founding fathers of our country, the United States, didn't want that at all. They had seen what was going on in England and other parts of Europe, where religion was really deciding who lived or died, just based on what aspect of which religion that they believed in. And many were condemned to death, and they were condemned through the blessings of the papacy or the clergy, whichever side you were on. They not only were you're going to be sentenced to death from the clergy or the papacy, you were going to be going to hell because you didn't believe exactly what they wanted you to believe. So when our founding fathers came in, they didn't want that. That's why you have the First Amendment is there's not going to be any state sanctioned religion. And even while that's the case, that does not mean that we shouldn't be free to believe as we want to. I mean, if you want to believe that Jesus Christ died and came back to life, you're more than welcome to do that. I'm not going to hold that against you. I may think you're silly or something like that, but I'm certainly not going to deny you rights or property, or I'm not going to call you out and say you shouldn't be able to do this or do that because you believe certain things. But whether you're Christian or whether you're Muslim or Jewish or whatever, there's a lot of you go, the higher up you go, and this is kind of the same thing with as I was talking about in the last video with like school boards and teachers, and the difference between the individual churches and the as you get higher up on the food chain of these organizations, you get less and less. You come across less and less people that are actually there to serve the greater good, and most of them are there to line their own pockets. And when you see the amount of political action committees, just take the abortion issue for example, and we're about to have a huge Supreme Court fight here in the United States. A lot of that is going to be on which side of the religion aspect you are. And if there's just as many atheists out there condemning people as there are very devout religious people. So atheism is it's an ism, it is a religion, and they are going to just because it's not, you don't have a God doesn't mean it's not a religion. I would argue that the global warming movement is very much a religion. I would argue that the idea that there is systemic racism in the United States in the 21st century is very much a religion. And just because there's no central God figure they all follow the same type of condemnation if you don't believe, the dogma, and if you don't follow the party line. Um, you know, even though I was raised in the Christian faith, I want to say starting in probably around 2012, 2013, was the time where I was just like, you know what, I'm going to stop calling myself Christian, because I don't believe that. I mean, I do believe there was a figure, named Jesus Christ, and that Jesus Christ, did some good things. But do I think that he came back to life after he was executed? No, I don't. Um, I don't. If you look at, um, the historical documentation of, Christians in the early first century, and how it was, just essentially brought back through the Byzantine Empire, and through that, I mean, it basically got in with the right political crowd. 100 and 150 years, 200 years after, Jesus lived, and and I'm not making this video to bash on Christianity. It's basically just as an example where the earliest gospel, I think, is Mark. That's the earliest that was written, or the one that was closest to the time where Jesus actually lived. It was written like 70, 75 years after Jesus lived. And a lot of the documentation, was word of mouth, just kind of stories that had passed, over 6 or 7 decades. And, how anybody can say, yeah, that's reliable. I mean, if I had turned in a college term paper or a research paper where I cited 6 to 7 decades of like, oh, this person said, I never would have graduated from college. I nor would anybody. There'd be no such thing as college degrees. And the fact that, you have people that are willing to, invest so much of their treasure and even their lives to defend the ideas that were written down. And I mean, then going into the, the council that put the Bible together, the Bible, even the Old Testament, was essentially a collection of stories that the Jews, basically just wrote down when they were enslaved by the Babylonians, many years before Christ. And again, these are just stories that were just passed down. Doesn't mean that there's not value in those stories. It doesn't mean that there aren't good lessons to be learned in those stories. But there's good lessons to be learned from Cinderella and Snow White. There's good lessons there. If I, read or, watch Beauty and the Beast or The Little Mermaid from Disney, I'm going to find good lessons out of those stories. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, I need to do everything and set my life, my every standard in my life by those lessons of those stories. I can just take them for what they're worth and try to make better decisions in my life with that. But that's, by and large, that's not what happens. You have people going and, when I watch, these like Joel Osteen, churches with these thousands of people, and they're all like, singing with their eyes closed and, just kind of, almost like in a trance, just it's unbelievable to me that they're just just willing to just give everything, and then a lot of times they'll just be like, hey, if you give this much money, then God will save you, and if you donate to this, then you'll be rewarded in heaven. And there's all these types of just like these prizes that you're gonna win if you passed this test that we call life. And a lot of that in Islam as well, the whole 72 virgins things, and even Islam's got a pretty good divide story where between the Shia and the Sunni divide, and it was all basically who was the real successor to Muhammad. It's fascinating. I mean, these are fascinating stories, and it's fascinating to me that so many human beings are willing to just give themselves to these things. But there is an awful lot of indoctrination that comes, from the church. And to be fair, to the teachers, that I was kind of coming down on, maybe not the teachers, but the public school system in general, there was a lot of indoctrination of religion through the school systems up until very recently. I mean, even I was in first grade in 1984. We prayed every day before lunch. I mean, think about that. In 1984, I had to say the prayer, God is great, God is good, let us thank him for our food. every day before lunch, and that's not a bad prayer. I mean, it's good to be thankful, and I think it's very, I almost think it's integral to understand that you are not the greatest thing to be out there. You know, I just because I'm not religious doesn't mean necessarily that I don't believe in the concept of God, but I don't think that there's any way that I have the brain power to even come close to understanding what God is all about or what God really wants. I mean, when I consider the size and the vast of the universe, if there is a God, and that God does know and care and love me, or whatever you want to think is like the best thing about a benevolent God, I think He's probably got more important things to do than worry about what's going on for me. I think that we have been given the choice. I think we have been given free will, and I think God just kind of like says, these are the parameters of your existence. You need to breathe. You need to eat. You need to get in groups and take care of each other the best you can. But ultimately, you're responsible for your choices, and your life is going to be dictated, or the outcome of your life is going to be dictated based on those choices, largely. Not all of it. There's a lot of luck, both good and bad, that comes along. But whether we are put in at the beginning of our lives in the worst situation or the best situations, that does not determine how our life is going to turn out. And I think that's by and large, the effect that God has when it comes to, how our lives are determined. And I certainly don't believe that He's like, or she is like, yeah, this is your test. You've got this amount of time to pass the test, and if you do, you get to run through fields and sit in hammocks and watch TV for the rest of your life. And if you don't, then you're cast into this lake of fire. I think the idea of hell has the indoctrination of the concept of hell has scared so many people and put so many people in fear that they're just willing to do anything, that anybody that they perceive, that has the inside track on how not to have that come about. And when I think about how many wars and just how many executions, or how many just straight up just murders have happened in the name of God, it's pretty astounding. And the government, whether it's a king, queen, president, Congress, whatever, they use that. They use that to love you. You will not have anybody that's running for president, Republican or Democrat, come out against a Jewish state. It's just not going to happen. That is not going to happen. You're not going to have anybody come out and and basically one way or the other, just say that we're going to not stand with Israel because Israel has the right to exist because of their religious beliefs and what happened. I mean, I don't think Israel should be wiped off the face of the map, but I don't think that they have the right to exist any more than an Islamic state like Pakistan or Iran. I don't think they have any more right to exist than the United States does, or Canada, or Bulgaria, just because they're God's people. And you always, and it doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat, you're going to have huge amounts of money coming in from various Israeli organizations, and that's not me being anti-Semitic. That's just the facts. And if you're in a country like Iran and you want to come out against Islam, you're not going to go very far. If you want to run for office in Arkansas and you want to come out against the Southern Baptists, you aren't going to go very far. It's and you get into these sects and the indoctrination, and it's very apparent. And and if you want to go to church to just understand, and with the understanding that there is something out there and you want to worship that or praise that or thank that or what have you, that's all well and good. I have no problem, like I said, with that at all. But to let it dictate every aspect of your life, how you vote, who you're going to marry, who you're going to allow in your home, or who you're going to direct your children to to I guess date or associate with. When I was 18, 19 years old, I was stationed in the state of Utah, and I went on several dates with some Mormon girls, and I really didn't care that they were Mormon one way or the other. But when I got to got to the second or third date time, and I was invited over, and seeing after a few games of Monopoly and after eating some Jello, the talk quickly turned to whether I was willing to convert to Mormonism, and every time I was like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. I didn't get to many fourth or fifth dates with these girls, and some of them were very nice people, and I'm obviously happy the way my life turned out from that, but it's just one of those things where I think religion in that way, one way or another, just kind of affects all of us in some regard, and for me to in any capacity think that those people weren't indoctrinated, and that indoctrination somehow didn't affect my life, it absolutely did. And I mean, in some regard, I mean, at the very least, I didn't get to a fourth or fifth date, with that. And so, there's a lot worse things that can happen, and a lot worse things that have happened. But it's just an anecdote, and just and I'm sure anybody watching this can probably think of something where the religious indoctrination of somebody that they've known has affected their relationship with that person or those different people. But that's I think that's about all I've got when it comes to the We Condemn You. And I could be wrong. I leave that as a possibility. I don't think I am, but making this video might be enough to get me a lifetime sentence in Hades or hell, where I'm like thrown in a lake of fire or something. I guess that's a possibility, but you know what, I'll risk it, because as of this day I'm a free human being, and that's how I'm going to express myself. And hopefully maybe I can thank God that Google is around to allow me to do this, and that I don't have enough subscribers or followers or watchers to have to worry about shadow ban, so, or anything like that. So I can be thankful in that regard. But regardless, love the silver, love the design, love the fact that I do have this 2015 round that somebody paid $1,000 for, and maybe it's worth it. I don't know. Thankful that I didn't pay $1,000 for this as well. So again, that's all I have. Appreciate your thoughts, your comments, your feedback. You guys have a great rest of what's left of this weekend, and I will be back with you all very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.